and thank our visitors for attending. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of Townsville, the Walgarookaba, of Gurrumbilbara and Yombinin and Bindal people, and pay our respects to their culture, their ancestors and their elders past and present and all future generations. Could I please ask Reverend Jason Smart if he could lead us off in prayer?
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you that in your wisdom you've put these men and women here over our city as our civic leaders, and we pray that you give them wisdom to make decisions that help this city to be as great as it can be in your eyes. We also pray for the people of this city who you love and who you've made in your image, many of whom are going through very hard times at this point in their life. We pray that you would help them to know your comfort, and we pray for a good season in our city, a good time, a time of blessing, especially in light of the upcoming storm season. Please take care of us, and we pray this in the name of your Son, our Saviour. Amen. Thanks, man.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you for that, and thank you for coming today. I have one apology, and that is Councillor Paul Jacob, who is on leave. Other than that, I believe we have a full house. So can I have is there any other leave of absence before I move that apology? Thank you. Councillor Stores.
Through the Chair, I have two items. One for the 1st and 2nd of November to attend the North Queensland Sporting Foundation AGM, and for the 18th and 22nd of November.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Are there any other leaves of absence? I'll go Councillor Ryder and then Councillor Walker. Yes, Councillor Ryder.
Yes, I've got a company's director's course on the 11th to the 15th of November and request leave.
All right, thank you, Councillor Ryder and Councillor Walker.
Yes, leave from the 6th to the 8th of November, inclusive. Thank you.
And Councillor Raybon.
Yeah, man, 28th to the 1st for AICD. Thank you.
I'm sorry, 28th
To the 1st, next week, man.
to the 1st of November. And councillors, I'm seeking leave from the 31st to the 4th of November. All right, so if I could have someone move, we accept that. Thank you, Councillor Molokino. Seconded, Councillor Raybine. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting from the 24th of September. There was some confusion over dates. Are the dates provided correct? Because that event has come and gone.
Yeah, that's fine. That's correct, Madam Mayor. In relation to that, I just want to make, if I can, noted the dates for that period was from the 14th to the 21st of October.
Yeah.
And yes, I chose to go. So that was the dates that I failed to submit at the time. But
That's
just want that noted on these minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you for that. I've put in, there was a couple of minor changes to the minutes. I'll move the minutes, I wasn't at the meeting, Councillor, so I need someone who was at the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Soares, seconded. Councillor Walker. We'll move to accept those, there's minor amendments to the minutes. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Now I will ask the legal officer to please read out the disclosure of interests.
Through the Chair, there have been recent changes to the local government legislation as part of Operation Balcara that could affect an individual councillor's involvement in today's discussion. These changes are now live and introduce new obligations for councillors regarding how they manage personal interests in any council matters that may arrive, including before a matter is considered at a formal council meeting. Councillors must consider if they have a personal interest, that is a material personal interest, a real conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest in any item being considered at today's council meeting. If a councillor has a material personal interest or a real or perceived conflict of interest in a matter today, it should be declared as required under the Local Government Act 2009. If another councillor at a meeting reasonably believes or reasonably suspects that a councillor has a material personal interest or a real or perceived conflict of interest in a matter to be discussed today, and that councillor has not informed the meeting about the interest, the other councillor must advise the chairperson of the meeting as soon as practicable about their belief or suspicion and the facts and circumstances that form the basis of that belief or suspicion.
Thank you. All right, so I have a disclosure of a conflict of interest for Team Jenny Hill. So I will read this out. Councillor Ryder, Saws, Greenie, Cook, Molokino, Doyle, Raybine, Coombe, Walker and Hill have a perceived conflict of interest. Item 26 of the October full council agenda. It is referred to this item be referred to the CEO under delegation as one of the tenderers is a wholly owned subsidiary of BMD Group. BMD Group had donated $10,000 to the Team Jenny Hill campaign, and this may create a perceived conflict of interest on this item. The amount of the donation received was declared on Team Jenny Hill ECQ disclosures that are on the ECQ website. I would like to note that the approach now required under legislation for the council to refer these matters under delegation to the CEO when there is a majority of councillors with a conflict of interest. Okay. Any others? Councillor Doyle?
Madam Mayor, just in relation to item 26, although you have declared it on behalf of the whole team, I need to declare a material personal interest as well. In that particular item, as my husband and I own commercial property and business within Flinders Street East Precinct of PDA, and our sons own and operate a business within that property. And as such, we stand to obey on the decision.
Thank you. So all the conflicts. Are there any other disclosures? Thank you, councillors. If not, I'll move to correspondence. CEO, is there any correspondence? Thank you. Petitions?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Just through the chair, on behalf of the residents of Crispin Court, Kerwin, I present this petition to council. In this petition, the residents of Crispin Court are requesting that the current permit issued to a local business operating within Crispin Court be revoked. In this petition, the residents are stating the operation of this business disrupts the entire livability and amenity of Crispin Court. I respectfully request the report be brought back to council about these matters at a later date. I now tender this petition to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll request a report to come back to council, if I may, CEO, on the item listed as part of this petition.
Received, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we have no notices of motions. We have 2 presentations today. If I could ask, is it Inga doing the 3?
Thanks, Madam. I've been asked today to come along and just give the council an update with regards to how the economic recovery is going for the city in regards to the unprecedented monsoon event. I do so on behalf of both myself and Councillor Coombs, who's the chair of the Economic Recovery Task Force. I am the coordinator in regards to that. The Economic Recovery Task Force, a quick overview there in regards to what its role is. Primarily is to coordinate, plan, implement, monitor and report on economic recovery measures. It does so through those responsibilities. Its composition was made up of ourselves and quite a large component of it being Townsville City Council, the Townsville Chamber of Commerce and Townsville Enterprise, Regional Development Australia, Department of State Development, Manufacturing, Infrastructure and Planning, Department of Employment, Small Business and Training, Department of Local Government, Department of Industry and Tourism, Treasury, Oz Industry and Support Means. The Economic Recovery Task Force stood up in the first week of the response process in February of 2019. The committee structure consists of the Economic Recovery Task Force, as mentioned previously, chaired by Councillor Coombs. Sitting underneath that with a local content subcommittee and a resilience and activation subcommittee. I'll go into more details as to the activities of those subcommittees. Priority actions. The first action was to in fact get the Small Business Recovery Centre up and running, getting grants, mentoring and advocacy in place for those businesses that were impacted, doing an impact assessment, understanding exactly business impacts were, both on a macro and micro level, looking at local content and activation and resilience. So local content, ensuring that our local businesses were in fact engaged through the rebuild process. The activation and resilience was primarily about getting the community united and moving forward under a united both vision and direction. Recovery planning places, and finally the recovery implementation, which we'll launch into now. Small Business Recovery Centre. It was open, a joint initiative of ourselves and the Department of Finance for Business and Training, open on Monday the 11th of February. So it's the week that in fact the floods ceased. We had Desk up here working with us. It's down 143 Walker Street, has been operating from there since. As mentioned previously, partnership between the Queensland Government and TCC, primarily staffed by the Department of Finance, Small Business and Training, and QRIDER. QRIDER is the authority responsible for all the grants, etc., that are run for small businesses, not-for-profit organisations, and primary producers. Since it was enacted, there has been 1,423 appointments through there, and some 1,600 calls from impacted businesses. It's been a very successful operation and will continue into the future. In fact, it's been nominated for a Premier's Award, as I understand it, and is being considered in relation to on behalf of the Department of Small Business and Training. The Disaster Recovery Funding Assistance, for those of you who recall, initially it was an amount of $10,000 for small businesses. Through lobbying, etc., it then rose to $25,000, and ultimately it now sits at $50,000. $25,000 that is upfront, and $25,000 is through reimbursements on receipt. So where are we sitting currently? We're sitting at 614 approved applications for regards to small business, which is some $8.6 million. This is the Townsville local government area alone. The primary producers, I was surprised at how many primary producers we have within the Townsville LGA. There's been 95 applications and some $4.8 million go to those primary producers. Not-for-profit organisations, 66 applications approved, almost $1 million there. In total, $14.3 million in relation to grants to date have gone out to the small businesses, primary producers and not-for-profit organisations in the Townsville local government area. That particular grant has had a number of extensions. Currently, it's extended through to in November. We've been advised that whilst there is demand for that grant, there'll continue to be extensions. We have drafted a letter to the state government for federal consideration for an extension beyond November. There is still strong demand for those grants, and still every reason to believe that it will be grants and extension through to early 2020. The loans are in fact allowed for a period of up to 2 years. To date, there hasn't been a huge take-up in respect to those. We're working with QRIDER to understand why. The $250,000 disaster assistance loans has been 14 of those approved, and the smaller $100,000 essential working capital loans has been 18 of those approved to date. I wouldn't be too concerned about that fact that has been taken up. It will take a while for those enterprises to sort their finances out, and we'll certainly be working with QRIDER to understand and work out how we can better get those loans out to those small businesses. Okay, as mentioned previously, we have two subcommittees. The Local Content Committee primarily was utilised to give us intelligence and communications directly down to the business level. It was run externally. It was chaired by Dennis Chipner, the CEO of RDA, on our behalf, and primarily engaged with business representatives and business representative organisations. It ran the insurance roundtables to date, and they were primarily focused on local content and ensuring that that in fact there was take-up by our businesses within the panel providers and also at a contract for that purposes. It also considered skill shortages, primarily through the master builders and the HIA, and also ran earlier on the piece of the Go Local, Grow Local campaign with this $1,000 provided through state government. That committee has now stood down and will be in fact working through another committee going forward. The Resilience Activation Committee was responsible for, was chaired by Councillor Kearns and assisted by Wayne Chiazza. It ran the 4 barbers and the birds events and primarily did some media management in relation to making sure that we're all pushing the right sort of direction in regards to the communication process that is occurring. The economic impact. This particular impact assessment is done by the Department of State Development. It is not the official Queensland Treasury figures, but I'd be very surprised if they change substantially. Look, in overall terms, the preliminary licence have been valued at just over $2 billion as far as the whole region is concerned. A significant portion of this transport and public asset capital damage. That's primarily the road, the rail out to the northwest, which obviously had some major disruption at that point in time. Other major areas, residential housing capital damage, $312 million. Business disruption was valued at $386 million. Agricultural output loss, etc. So you can see those figures there in regards to what the initial assessment will be. Ultimately, Queensland Treasury, for the purpose of the State Council, will do their own assessment and they will be the official figures that will come out for that purpose. Okay, situation of small businesses. This is a survey that is run by the Department of Employment, Small Business and Training in conjunction with ourselves. There has been 619 respondents to date. Of those, 74.5% were directly impacted. The estimated direct damage from those businesses who responded is some $42 million. The estimated average damage from those businesses that were impacted is some $91,000 per business. You can see that, unsurprisingly, they sit pretty close to where our flooding impact occurred. The insurance impact. To date, this is in fact as of October. There are some 30,396 claims submitted. 10% of those, or approximately 10% of those, were commercial. The value of those is $1.248 billion in total. To date, there has been $768 million of local rebuild delivered. So of that, you're looking at about 60-65% of the rebuild process has been completed to date. We'll still have rebuild process continue well into the new year as part of the insurance process, and obviously the workforce is still fully engaged for that purpose. Recovery planning, primarily based on the information that you saw there previously, we have been lobbying for continuous updates in relation to disaster assistance recovery grants. That goes through to 29th of November. We will lobby again in respect to that continuing and have been assured that there will be an extension in relation to that. In addition to that, there has been $10 million allocated over 2 years from the natural, the NRFA, the recovery funding assistance that the state and federal government fund into the small business side of things. There's been a further $5 million from the tourism package. In addition to that, through the ACCC insurance inquiry, Northern Australia insurance inquiry, there has been a sub-regional case study started in relation to the impacts on insurance premiums for not only residents and strata title, but also small business within the region. That is due to report on the 30th of November, and we are liaising with the ACCC on the conduct of that sub-regional study as it moves forward. So primarily those are the things we've got in place: $10 million for small business, $5 million for tourism, the ACCC inquiry, and of course we'll continue to have the grant funding go as long as there is significant demand for that. The implementation side of things. The Economic Recovery Task Force that Councillor Coombs chairs is in fact stood down for the time being. It has not been folded. We will stand up as required going forward, but we have developed a Small Business Recovery Advisory Council. This is a broader group that has coverage across the whole of the impacted area in regards to the economic recovery side of things. It is responsible for, correction, it's not responsible for, it provides oversight for the $10 million Small Business Recovery Package. That primarily has been allocated into the Small Business Recovery Centre with $1.5 million allocated to that. Small Business Recovery Centre, which is located down 143, will relocate the Smart Precincts NQ. Once, in fact, we've got Smart Precincts up and running early in the year. So we'll transfer from there into Smart Precincts. There is $2 million being put into business mentoring and coaching for recovery. There is some $1 million into business recovery and resilience planning. There'll be $2.5 million allocated into a Go Local campaign, so ensuring that we are in fact working with local businesses and having fund arising from that. And there is currently an additional $10,000 grant that is going out through DESPIT for small business recovery grants, and so $3 million allocated to that. Year to date, and it's only been out there for about 3 months, there's about $800,000 that has been through the door in relation to those recoveries. The $5 million tourism package, a significant portion that was spent in the initial period, promotion, etc., to try and get people back here. There still is about $3 million outstanding in relation to that. We're lobbying currently to have it report back into the Small Business Recovery Advisory Council. That is chaired by Devon Rhodes, who is the immediate past president of the Townsville Chamber of Commerce, and there's good representation in relation to the local business community and obviously other interest groups, etc. Madam Mayor, that concludes my presentation. I'm not sure if you wish to ask if there's any questions.
Thank you, David. Are there any questions?
Yes, through the chair. At the beginning, you said there was 1,400 appointments. Do you know what the makeup was with them with non-for-profit small businesses?
There'll be very, very few not-for-profits going through there. Not-for-profits, number one, didn't get impacted anywhere near as much, but obviously the impact was probably more felt by them volunteer-led.
Yep.
But there's been very few. I can't give the exact ratios, but I suspect it's pretty similar to the ratios that we saw in regards to the grants that were in fact going out. If you look at those.
Well, that leads into my next question, sorry, through the chair. So 66 of those non-for-profits applied for the grants.
Yep.
Do you know what the majority of them applied for?
No, I couldn't tell you what. We can take them and know some more information.
That'd be good.
Through QI.
Yep.
There will also be some level of confidentiality associated with them. I'm sure we'll look into some sort of idea in regards to where the impact was. It needed to be material, it needed to be directly impacted by the floods.
Yep.
So it would have been things like computers and loss of stock and those sort of things that were required. It also needed not to be recovered by insurance. Which is part of the reason why those grants are still in demand. People are still sorting their insurance out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Sorry, no, Madam Mayor, it's more a
Councillor
comment.
Doyle.
Yeah, just wanting to comment on the impact or the positive impact of the business mentoring and coaching. I've seen that firsthand with a couple of the small businesses that are in Herbert Park and Hyde Park, and that we have had positive feedback.
Thank you. All right, thank you, David, and could you thank the team and Councillor Kern, the work your committee's been doing. It's an important part of the recovery process. Thank you, councillors. There are no other presentations. If I may, I'll rise to now give a mayoral minute about our trying to revitalise our city image. Councillors, as part of a commitment to the people of Townsville, this council has been very active in rebuilding after the monsoonal event, generating new economic development initiatives that will create new jobs, revitalise the CBD and supporting the creation of the new stadium precinct. We've invested in events such as NAFA and Townsville Eats, all of whom that have been very successful and brought much needed life and economic activity to our city post the monsoon. Next year we will see the opening of the new North Queensland Stadium with Elton John as the headline act, a new home for the Cowboys and other events that more than likely will bring people into our CBD area. Work will finish on Flinders Lane and the transport links to the stadium. While most members of our local community and businesses have embraced the efforts to improve our city's image, it has been disappointing that some building owners are allowing their buildings to become dirty, dilapidated and in obvious need of repair. This has detracted from our city image and has had negative impacts on businesses nearby. Their neglect is costing us jobs and making it harder for us to attract investment to Townsville overall. We've been working closely with these building owners over an extended period to address the situation. And while there has been some robust discussion along the way, unfortunately, we're not seeing the improvements we'd hoped for. Well, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, enough is enough. As Mayor, I will not stand by and allow these recalcitrant building owners to get away with this any longer. Today I stand before Council with a proposal to introduce a tough new local law giving us the power to clean up these derelict buildings and strengthen our ability to remove graffiti. The proposed law is very similar to the local law used to clean up Fortitude Valley in Brisbane. The proposed law, which will be subject to a straight interest check and public consultation before it can be enacted, will require building owners to ensure their building is maintained so that its appearance does not detract from other buildings in the area. Property owners who do not clean up rundown buildings will face fines of over $26,000. The new local law will also give Townsville City Council the right to ask courts to order property owners to clean up their derelict properties. Once the proposal is approved at today's council meeting, the next step for us is to commence consultation with the state government to obtain their approval, and also to begin a public consultation phase for introducing the proposed law. Statutory time limits mean, sadly, it's likely to take 6 months before this law is in place. My message to the owners of these derelict buildings is quite clear. They should do the right thing by the community now and use the time to clean up their act and not wait until they are forced to do so. A copy of the draft local law and supporting attachments summarising the process has been tabled for the consideration by councillors. Councillors, I'd like to recommend, and I'll move, that Council resolve to propose to make local law number 8, Unsightly Buildings 2019, and a subordinate local law number 8, Unsightly Buildings 2019. I move that. Could I call for a seconder? Councillor Raybone. Thank you. Is there, as seconder, do you wish to speak?
I'd love to speak on it, Mayor. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. On behalf of the residents of Division 7, the division I represent, thank you for bringing this local law to the Chamber today, Mayor. We are, of course, a proud city, one who takes pride in our home and where we live, but sadly there is that minority, the slumlords and the dilapidated building owners out there who conduct little or no maintenance on their properties and bring the look and feel of our city down, much to the angst of the broader community. Quite frankly, they haven't lent us. It's no secret I'm a strong proponent of solving the issues this law seeks to address, and it will be wonderful to see this law in action within our city CBD. Of course, today, as you said, is the first step, and the next we'll be hearing from the community. No doubt there will be concerns raised throughout this process. However, it must be said that this law is aimed at those who do not take care of their buildings and leave them looking derelict, dilapidated, and are ultimately a blight in our city. I throw my full support behind this law. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other councillors who wish to speak on this? None? Right. Thank you, councillors. So I've moved and we have a seconder. If there is no further discussion, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I'll now move to, I will seek the indulgence of council. I would like to begin with item 25, the material change of use, MCU 19/0007, if I can, because we have representatives who wish to make a submission for and a submission not supporting the proposed changes. If I can call upon the Acting Director of Planning, please.
Yes, I will defer to give you a quick summary of the application.
If you could, please.
Planner, and then the submissions can
Thank you, Neil.
development relates to material changes or extensions to the total site, operational or artificial development at 1 to 9, Manchester Drive, North. The site is more commonly known as the Bush Oasis Caravan Park, which is designated within the rural residential zone and is affected by bushfire hazard and fair hazard protocols. The development is assessed in accordance with the Planning Act, planning regulations, state plan provisions, and the Townsville City Council. The development for the expansion of the tourist park is the unused balance of the lot that gives us more customary site. The proposal includes 13 new caravan sites, 10 new glamping tents, 2 communal kitchen tents, a community tent, a booting garden, and an artificial well. The new caravan and tent site will be located around the outskirts of the total artificial well and will be located centrally in the unused planned caravan site. The 2 communal kitchens are located over the northern end of the wetland and the ablution garden to the south. The wetlands are not only proposed to be an appealing visual addition to the site, but to facilitate additional functionality with existing wastewater and stormwater management systems. The wetlands will result in an upgrade of the capacity of the existing on-site sewage treatment system, which requires changes to their ERA lines, which they have been currently obtained during the successful process. Under the planning regulation, the application to further the state of the ERA component and for development within 25 acres of the planning project. The state provided their approval with conditions which are attached to this proposed development process. The application was impact assessable, therefore requiring such a notification. During the notification period, 2 submissions were received, accepting this development. Both submissions raised safety concerns relating to stormwater and wastewater impact on their downstream properties. These submissions have been considered and will be discussed further in section 7 of the report. In summary, development is consistent with the strategic intent of the Townsville Plan. Therefore, recommended for approval, subject to reasonable and relevant conditions.
Thank you very much, Neil. What I might do is, now the consultant is BNC for the landowner, and we have 2 submitters. Are both submitters here or just one? Thank you. Would you like to come forward, please, and state your reasons? And could you please, for the purpose of the minutes, give us your name?
My name's Tony Birch, and my husband Russell Birch.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to address the council. It's a little bit daunting, but bear with me.
I know, and I must say, normally we do this at committee, but this has come through main council.
Let me start off by being very clear that we are not opposed to the expansion of the caravan park. I have lived in that area since 1974, and I have been a direct neighbour of the caravan park since 1988. I have seen caravan park owners come and go over the years. So I do support small business, and I do feel that it's great to see our local community moving forward. But there's a but, however. I have no formal qualifications in environmental laws, town planning, or such like. However, I do have 3 things in my favour. 1, history. I do know how the land naturally formed. I do remember how the ground used to be. When the caravan park owners have changed hands in 2009, the owners that were in place at the time, I believe, and I'm going to submit to council, that I believe operational works were carried out at the rear of that caravan park unlawfully. I tried to collect Google images capturing some of the excavations, and I was successful in finding some on Google Earth. You can actually see the excavator in progress. You can actually see how the land naturally formed, how the water flowed. In 2009, that owner decided he wanted to reclaim more land at the back of his caravan park and decided to fill in natural waterways and create a drain point that pushed the water off his land and subsequently eroded ours. At the time, it was done right at the end of his time at the caravan park, and our complaints fell on deaf ears. As the years have gone on, what has happened is erosion has taken its course. Our neighbour, who couldn't be with me today, has a fence line that no longer has any soil under it. Parts of our fence line are now 1 foot shorter than they used to be. The water flows and the sediment is going through our block, straight into Whites Creek, Alligator Creek, and straight out onto Great Barrier Reef. Now, I'm not opposed to the expansion, but in the plans that the developer has put forward, and they are quite comprehensive, and I don't have a degree, but I can read, and they keep referring to the existing drainage points. They're utilising the existing drain that's in place to the north end of the caravan park. That existing drain at the north end of the caravan park, I believe, was not put in place correctly to begin with. So you can understand, and I'm sure as homeowners yourselves, that if suddenly you hear news that suddenly the effluent is going to be a lot more and a lot more water coming through, alarm bells start ringing, this is going to get worse. I've read the plans. I have given them to a friend to read who used to be a certifier with the council, and he too is concerned that there are not good enough measures in place and they are relying on something that was put there unlawfully to begin with. Okay, I'll be faster. Look, should the council have a view to accept this proposal, I further submit that in doing so, surely it's not unreasonable for a certified, qualified person in the council to at least come and talk to us. Have a look at the erosion that's taken place and investigate into what those operational works took place in 2009. Because the existing owner that wants to expand and utilise all of this isn't interested in our complaints. We didn't do it, it's not our problem. In a nutshell, the plan intends to use those drains, and we submit those drains actually weren't put in properly in the first place. And it's not unreasonable for us to, as an applicant, to carry out, I'd like to see them carry out such works to remediate the damage that's already sustained to our downstream properties and to prevent any further damage or any environmental impacts from further occurring. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, Fiona. Oh, sorry, Tony. Is there a representative of the landowner? Thank you. If you'd like to come forward and please state your name for the minute. Clerk.
My name is Ben Collins. I'm from Bensy Planning, so I'm the planning consultant who represents the landowner who is also the applicant for the application. Her apologies, she can attend today. I won't take up too much of your time today, but look, I thought it would be worth starting by acknowledging the issues that have been raised earlier here today as well as during the submission process. There's obviously a need as an adjoining landowner to be vigilant when development is being proposed next door to you, and the public involvement process throughout the DA system is an integral part to its success. But it's probably important in this instance to note that these issues are not new issues. They're issues that always identified proactively throughout this process, even before the development application was starting to be drafted. To that end, and as alluded to, the applicants outlaid a significant amount of time and resources to prepare basically an integrated environmental management plan throughout the now 8-month process that we've gone through to get to the point where we are here today. These reports basically seek to identify, assess and mitigate any impacts with the development, not just environmental, but issues relating to traffic, as well as simple land use issues. To ensure this outcome is achieved, processes involve rigorous due diligence and quality assurance checks across 3 levels of assessment. Firstly, being the applicant's engagement of the suitably qualified and experienced environmental engineer to prepare the referenced management plans. These include both mitigation measures, detailed modelling and reports, including addressing issues such as site stormwater management, waste management in terms of on-site wastewater, soil erosion, sediment control, to name a few. Secondly, there's been Council's internal environmental services and planning department who have been accepting of the proposal today and accepting of the management strategies put forward to mitigate the issues, reflective of the recommendation featured today. But probably to a more detailed point has been the state's involvement, specifically the Department of Environment and Sciences. They've been the major quality assurance and vetting check throughout this process, both in their role as a referral agency, which they've accepted proposed mitigation measures and issued referral response in support of the approval, but probably to a greater extent their role in administering environmental authority permits, which relate to environmentally relevant activities under the Environmental Protection Act. As alluded to earlier, this permit has been issued already. It is a process that's integrated into the development testing system, which is why it was able to be issued before a decision on this application. But it does provide a very good basis for Council to use to be assured that those mitigation measures will work and that they adequately address the issues. The need to appropriately manage impacts on adjoining land and the environmental issues themselves isn't a choice that the applicant gets to make. It is a legislative requirement. The applicant has not been able to progress to this point where they're not able to demonstrate this and where support from Council and Department of Science is not provided, and where the EA, being the Environmental Authority, not having been issued. It's worth noting as well that furthermore, this project actually provides the opportunity to control and address any existing issues that may occur on the land, whether approved or not. The conditions of approval, as we've seen, will achieve this, and the reports themselves account for an outcome as opposed to what's occurring there at the moment. This level of support doesn't occur unless environmental issues have been managed, which is reflective of the position taken by the Planning Services Department with that.
Thank you. All right, I'll ask councillors, do they have any questions of either the applicant or the submitter? Yes, Councillor Molokino.
Just in relation to the submitter, we're talking about...
You want to speak into the microphone?
In relation to the submitter, talking about erosion issues surrounding her property, just so I can understand, if I may, Madam Mayor, what residence is she referring to in relation to where she lives and the impacts?
Obviously a report here. Can you advise us where your property is to the property to the...
I share boundary fence. Caravan Park, the corner, is our property, and Kerry Cooper is the side property. So the two of us, corner on. In the not too distant future, we won't actually have a corner posted.
So you're...
11, 13, Madam Mayor.
Yes, so are you 11 and 13 along the road?
15, Kerry Cooper is 13.
All right. Okay.
So if I may, Madam Mayor, now that I can see where they're talking about, it does show on the flood mapping here, there is an existing drain that runs down around that triangular property to the outside of it, to the northwest. I guess firstly, that drain was put in, was that an approved drain put in initially? And secondly, that drain seems to flow straight into their property at number 15. Is the proponent prepared to work with these guys to try and alleviate any issues on this level?
So, if I could ask the proponent's representative if they could answer that.
I don't have anything to add in terms of past work, so as a consultant, probably worth noting as part of the draft conditions that have been put forward, that area of the site has been required to essentially be reverted back from the development fund, so the actual loan and the built form taken out of that area to allow any of those sort of environmental or drainage measures to be put in place that affect things like internal lines or the location of the tank or whatnot. So the process is operation works, application comes in there to chat that detailed design, which is supported by an amended site plan to show that area is free.
If I may, Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The apologies. So you can hear me. The submitters raised some issues around the issue of flooding onto their property from this development and erosion. So, as the proponent's representative, do you know if the proponent's prepared to work with these guys to mitigate these reported issues around the flooding and erosion onto their property from this proposed development?
I would think so, and I would expect the Commission to approve the operation process provide details provided and comes from the behalf of specifically, but I mean, these guys just want that to make sure that it's informed that everyone can understand what's happening.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So is that something that we are possibly able to put into the conditions on this? Or it's already in there? Just if I can get clarification on that.
Yes, I will. Could I ask the Director of Planning?
Through the Chair, I refer the Councillor and Council to Condition 9 of the report. It refers to stormwater drainage. So in particular, it actually refers to the stormwater management plan submitted by the applicant. It refers to the Council's healthy water codes as well as the Townsville City Plan. But more importantly, the first two lines of that condition are the most important aspects. An appropriately qualified and experienced registered professional engineer of Queensland must certify that the stormwater drainage achieves the outcomes of all of those policies and plans. So if it doesn't achieve that, then you're not going to have a registered engineer signing off on the outcome.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Just, if I could, Madam Mayor.
Sure. And then I'll go
I have to apologise. I don't know what the part 9.3.2 of the Health and Waters Code, the Stormwater Management Plan is. Will that help address these issues, I guess, in a nutshell?
Through the Chair, to achieve the stormwater outcomes, it needs to satisfy the recommendations and the outcomes of the stormwater management plan that's been submitted. It needs to satisfy the Townsville City planning requirements from a stormwater drainage perspective, as well as the healthy water codes policies as well. So, in particular, the stormwater management plan's identified as part of the MCU approval, but also as part of the operational works, and the operational works can't commence until those stormwater management plans and all those policy objectives are met.
So to add to that, our planners and engineers will get another look at the proposal because there are a lot of further approvals that still have to be done, one of which is stormwater management and stormwater quality management.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Doyle and then Councillor Walker. Councillor Doyle and then Councillor Green.
Madam Mayor, I suppose I have 1974 ringing in my ear that the submitter has been on that property for that length of time and obviously has historical and lived experience in relation to the flooding effects. And I'm wondering, has anybody actually visited their property to see the impacts of that flooding today?
Thank you, Councillor Doyle.
Just through the Chair, how can we facilitate that process? Because moving forward, if we're council to approve this, you know, it will potentially have further impacts. And I appreciate that we have engineers and we have reports, but we also have lived experience.
Sure. Councillor Doyle, I'll also throw to the fact that this was considered as well as it was referred to the Department of State Development, Manufacturing, Infrastructure and Planning, who also have placed some conditions on there. What I think we could suggest is a meeting with our engineers to explain the codes and what the requirements will be on the developer or on the applicant as part of this process. That may go a long way into giving some clarity in the situation to the submitters. So we could ensure that takes place. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Walker and then Councillor Greenie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Refer to page 61, section 9. We talk about erosion, but we also need to talk about the revegetation, which is critical in relation to managing this. If in the event that this is approved, we need to have that explained as well, because I see this is heavily conditioned in relation to the revegetation.
Page 61.
Of the council agenda, page 61, section 9. I noticed there's a couple of section 9s and a couple of section 10s.
That's in accordance with Special Condition 6.4.
Yeah. So just to be mindful, it's not just about erosion, just about how stormwater management, there's a whole series of works that surround that.
Correct. So
they're all critical to, if in the event this is approved, that revegetation is the critical point in this, and I see the state actually pushes heavily on these sort of conditions, which is a wetland, then it must have been conditioned in relation to managing their stormwater and wastewater on site, which is critical. I think, just listening to the conversation from the submitters, that there has been some overland flows that have gone in. So it looks like this has been redirected back internally to be managed in a low flow event. Because I just noticed, Madam Mayor, that in the drawing there's a low flow drainage point and a high flow. So it's interesting, I see the tanks are 22,000 litres and then there's a high flow to the corner. So it'd be interesting to see how that revegetation interfaces with those low flow and high flow outlets. I think that's critical for the submitters to be aware of, and they need to be fully informed how they work from an environmental perspective. I think that's very, very important for them.
All right. I think we may refer back to our engineers. If I could ask, yes, Leslie?
Through the Chair, Madam Mayor, if I could just point out, we do have one of our very own REPQ qualified engineers here who's been dealing with this application, who would be able to answer some of the technical questions if you would like. Paul?
Yeah, so there was a condition in the MCU about requiring another operational work. Inside that operational works, that is set up to pick up this potentially unlawful work that is happened on the site. So to remedy that, assessed again further as part of operational work, and make sure that it complies with our standards, and our standards will have water quality. We have water quality objectives that the water has to achieve before it can leave the site, which would be similar, if not the same, as what the state has imposed on the ERA. We would also be looking at further looking at what work has happened that's changed, potentially changed where the water flow has been happening. I've been looking at it myself. Unfortunately, we're going to step back to the 2009 contours at the moment. So I'm still sort of investigating where that flow is happening. But there's definitely, you can see on the corner of the lot, up in a triangular place, where there was some work carried out. When that was, I'm not sure, but that will be picked up as part of the operational work, so we can fix that issue and pull that back. And if the applicants are going to work with us on that, then we can resolve that.
Let me sum up your comments here. You do agree with the submitter there may have been work done without proper operational works?
Yes.
And you believe that if by working together on this project, we may be able to relieve some of the issues they're currently having?
Yeah, that's what the intent would be. Yeah.
All right. Paul, thank you very much. Councillor Greenie.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. As a councillor who is actually experiencing this and it's ongoing and the situation I think that you're completely aware of, Madam Mayor, in my division, and the same thing is happening, my question to council staff is what are the checks and balances, and if I could direct that question to Neil, about how, if these conditions are imposed, Neil, how will we make sure that they're carried out?
Paul suggested we request a minute in time to check the balance of the council that stage, ensure that the meeting for and then if the site works go further, there will be site inspections by asset inspectors and board
Sorry, and through the chair, if they're not met, will they be fined?
That is a possibility, yes. That will be a consideration at the time of the money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? All right. I'll ask someone that we move to accept the report.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Ryder?
I'm just going back to the comment about the neighbours not having a discussion and the consultation that hasn't taken place so far. So can I just clarify the comment that you made about no consultation, or can I just need to understand how we got to here with somebody addressing us with no consultation.
All right, if the submitter would like to stand up.
Sign out the front of the caravan park saying that an open stand. So I looked it up on the website. I found out about it before I even got a letter in the mail. I'm enjoying the property. So then I had to investigate what was they doing and how they were going to send the water. It took me hours to understand how they were going to direct the excess water, and it was not going to.
Could I ask the...
Well, I need to know, because we elect you and we trust your judgment, so I need to know, will I be informed of what they're going to do and that they're actually doing it?
All right, can I ask the proponent, please? If you could please give us a timeline, because there is a statutory requirement on the process of an MCU.
Yes, there is. So the Planning Act outlines the requirements of the done a lot of application for the government is identified through the planning scheme or planning regulations like that. That involves a site sign that is put up, joining owners' letters and a public notice in the paper. That process runs for 15 business days. We tend to run ours for a couple of days longer just to give a little bit of leniency on that. The applicant through statutory declaration met those requirements. And I suppose the process following that is the ability to have submissions lodged, which occur within those 15 business days. The applicant is afforded the sort of informal right, I suppose, to provide to council a response to those matters which occur. So I suppose from our side, the statutory requirements were met with regard to what constitutes a broken.
So I just want to be sure that the property owners did receive their letters as well.
They did. We put the sign up a little bit early simply because of the weekend, and technically we have to provide a statutory declaration that says they're already up.
Yeah.
We just sort of had a little bit of a delay when things are in and everything posted.
I know, sadly, Australia Post doesn't deliver every day anymore.
Madam, through the chair, it's the next door neighbour. I mean, I appreciate that statutory requirements have been met, but I suppose common courtesy potentially dictates, just from an engagement perspective and a desire to get a good outcome, that you would engage face to face and on a personal level with your neighbour. And these aren't things that we can change here, but I want to state that it would potentially help everybody in this situation to walk over and have a conversation.
Thank you, Councillor. Comment noted. Councillor Walker, did you want to say something?
I just want to check that that was registered mail. I just heard a comment, registered mail. So was it registered, Madam Mayor?
All right, so if I could check with...
Register mail is just something that we do as a delegated register. It's not to provide, all we can probably say is that information is provided to not just the submitters themselves, but to all of them.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you. All right, are there any other questions? Can I remind councillors that this has gone through it is considered an environmentally relevant activity and required concurrent agency to work with council to develop the conditions on this. I would like it that after the meeting that arrangements are made with the proponent, the submitter and our council staff to explain exactly what those requirements will be under the development application and the operational works, so everyone understands what is required. I think we all should take into account the comments made by our engineer around the fact that this development may assist in alleviating some of the problems felt by landholders downstream. And many of you will know that when these development applications come in, quite often they can improve the situation for adjoining landholders because we actually have a line of sight of what is proposed and can set down relevant conditions to ensure that they can alleviate some of the problems. All right, councillors, can I have someone move that we accept this report? Is there an appetite for that? Thank you, Councillor Molokino. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Raybine. All right, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour of this material change of use, item 25. Thank you. All those against? Councillor, I require you under the Act to give a statement of reason why you you choose to vote against the officer's recommendation.
I choose because in my opinion, I don't think we've done enough engagement with both parties, and I don't know if it meets any planning act.
Councillor, I understand your concerns, but you realise that under the Local Government Act, if you choose to go against the recommendation of staff, that we require a statement of reason, a valid statement of reason for that as per the Planning Act.
Well, my statement would be, I think it would be in the interest of the community to set a precedent about.
All right, Councillor.
Councillor Rogers.
I might ask the CEO.
I'm happy to work with the councillor in putting together the appropriate objection so that it can meet the requirements.
All right. Councillor, I think your statement should be along the lines that you believe that the development application does not properly address the submitter's concerns, and that that is the reason why you have chosen not to support the recommendation of staff.
Thank you.
All right.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. The conditions that you just mentioned before about the planning staff, could they be noted in the minutes as well, please?
Yes, I'll ask for the comments made particularly by our engineer, if they could be noted in the minutes of the meeting. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move back to the agenda proper and go to the presentation of committee reports. And could I ask Councillor Molokino, please, if he could please present his Infrastructure Committee report to Council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to present the Infrastructure Services Committee report from the 8th of October, items 1 to 3 on pages 1 to 3 of the Council agenda.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Walker. Are there any comments from the Chair?
Madam Mayor, for my only item 2, just on the road closure, private gate application.
Yes.
We had a really good outcome on that. The committee recommended we go back and have a bit more of a chat to the local residents in the area. And a good outcome of that was we came back with a pedestrian gate to allow the horse riders in that rural area to get access to there. So it's not completely closed off. They can still use it for their recreational activities such as horse riding and walking. So
That's a very good outcome. All right. Any other comments from members of committee or council? If not, then we have a mover and seconder. We will put that committee report to the vote to be accepted. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Could I now ask Councillor Walker, please, to present his Planning and Development Committee report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to move Planning and Development Committee meeting items 4 to 10 as per the agenda here today, excluding item 8, which will be dealt with in item 24.
Councillor, I don't think we need to exclude it because the recommendation is that that be referred to full council, and it has been as part of item 24 on this agenda.
Yep. Okay.
So I just seek clarification. We can accept the full committee report now?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So items 4 to 10, I move those. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Greenie, thank you very much. Are there any comments from the committee chair?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Are there any comments from any of the committee members or councillors? All right. If not, we'll put that to the vote that we accept the Planning and Development Committee report. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. We will be dealing with item 8 as we go through. It has now become item 24 in the main agenda. Could I now ask Councillor Greenie, please, to move her committee report, Community Health and Environment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to present the Community Health and Environment Committee report from Wednesday the 9th of October 2019, contained within pages 15 and 16 of the Ordinary Council agenda for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ryder, thank you very much. Is there any discussion from the Chair of Committee?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to hand over to Councillor Cook in regards to the Flying Fox management.
Thank you. That's a very topical item, and it was very topical at the Local Government Association yet again.
I have no doubt, Madam Chair. Madam Mayor, through the Chair, the flying fox issue is prevalent in many councils in North Queensland, including Townsville. And as such, I'll be attending this forum and will report back to councillors. There are many topics that will be presented at this forum that include, but are certainly not limited to, managing urban flying fox camps into the future, large-scale survey of residents living close to flying fox camps, bless you, guide to conflict management, effectiveness of education on flying foxes in Australian communities, wildlife management versus human conflict management. It is because of these topics that will be covered that I think my attendance will be beneficial for Townsville City Council as well as Townsville residents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Flying foxes have been the bane of this council since I began in 1997, and while our knowledge of their habits has improved, we've only been able to really skirt along the edges in terms of how we deal with them. I'm hopeful that some of the ideas that our staff have, if we could seek funding through various state and federal government agencies to assist, I would love to see us trial that to deal with our flying fox problem in this city.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I agree, and I also think that we have the added advantage of having a great CMO crew as well as Greg Bruce, who's very knowledgeable on this subject and is more than willing to pass that knowledge on to councillors and staff at any time.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor. Well, I look forward to hearing all about the latest movements of flying foxes when you get back. All right, we have a mover and a seconder. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will put that committee report to the council for adoption. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Could I ask Councillor Doyle, please, to move her Community and Cultural Development Committee report?
Madam Chair, I wish to present the Community and Cultural Development report from Wednesday the 9th of October. I wish to present items 13 through to 17 contained within pages 17 to 21 of the agenda for adoption.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ryder. Thank you. Is there any comment from the committee chair? Councillor Doyle?
Chair, just always a pleasure to bring to council committee's recommendations in relation to our grants and partnerships funding agreements, and this one is no exception. Stable on the Strand, which I believe is in its 25th year. the combined churches continue to deliver this fantastic community event and have been a solid community partner, not only with the community but with council on numerous occasions, least of all the monsoonal event this year. So,
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. I think many of us in this room remember taking our children to some of the very early stables on the Strand, and it really has become I think, part of a focal point for our Christmas celebrations here in our community. All right, any other comment? Councillor Coombe?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I would like to second what the Chair had to say. We did hear from our staff in relation to the increased funding that we're actually giving Stable on the Strand this year, and I'd be interested to have one of the staff explain to the rest of the council why we've chosen to do that.
All right, do we have... Thank you. Do you want to come forward, please?
Very much. So, what we've seen is an increase in funding, as the councillor mentioned, of around about $36,000 this year. There's been a number of factors for that. It's a considerable increase. We appreciate that. But the event itself is expanding year on year. So this year they're building a market component, which we've seen some increased funding in terms of infrastructure for setting up the market. We've also seen the impact, I guess, on the community in terms of, in previous years, a lot of the events and parts of the event itself have been managed through their volunteers, through the combined churches. And obviously with the monsoonal event earlier in the year, volunteering capacity has been stretched and lots of people coming towards the end. We're seeing the effects in lots of our community initiatives. And so for that, in some of the roles that were originally taken or usually taken on by our volunteers, such as the overnight security at the venue over the 5 days, has had to be moved to our professional security team, which has seen a considerable increase in their costs, but one we think is equal to it's necessity really for the event to go ahead and be successful and safe. And we're also working in partnerships. This is obviously the partnership officer role is new this year, and we've already had considerable consultation with some of the committee members in terms of the event management itself and then future reporting, so then we'll be able to report back to the impact and improve and add some sophistication to some of the events so we can better see the impact on our community. As we know anecdotally that it's a great event and that lots of people do attend it, but what we're trying to help these organisations is to become better at reporting those information back to council so we can then properly celebrate the impact and I guess how many people in our community access them. So that's where we've seen an increase in the funding this year and seen the committee and the team come together to ask for some further support in this area.
All right. Thank you very much. The council is happy with that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. What I would like everybody to note is that the combined churches did an amazing job and some heavy lifting around the time of the monsoon, and they've been tapped out as far as their volunteer and capacity is being concerned. So I appreciate staff acknowledging that in this increased funding.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Councillor Coombe. Any other comments on the report? We have a mover and seconder, so I'll ask councillors now to vote on the adoption of this report. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Could I ask Councillor Coombe, please, to present the Governance and Finance Committee report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to present the Governance and Finance Committee report from Thursday the 10th of October. Items 18 to 20 in the agenda contained within pages 22 to 24.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Doyle, thank you very much. Any comments from the committee chair?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, everybody will notice the intention to sell properties for rates arrears. What I would like to assure everybody that a lot of work is being put in by staff to contact the people on the list so that we're assured that people who are affected by the flooding event are not being caught up in this. So it's not all bad news. People who are, find themselves in this situation often appreciate the fact that they get this notice, which allows them to tap into other sources of funding. And I believe it's been a very low zero number of times that we've actually taken any residential property owners through the full process. So I would just like to commend that report to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coombe. Are there any other comments or questions from councillors on this report? If not, I'll ask you now to vote on the adoption of this report. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Could I now ask Councillor Cook, please, to present his Townsville Water and Waste Committee report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to present the Townsville Water and Waste Committee report from Thursday, the 10th of October 2019. Items 21, 22 and 23 contained within pages 27 to 28 and 29 of the Ordinary Council agenda.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Molokino, thank you. Are there any further comments from the committee chair? None? Any questions or comments from councillors around the report? I thought the curbside waste and recycling audit showed
Interesting reading.
very interesting reading, especially in terms of support from the community. So, all right, councillors, then I will ask you now to vote on the adoption of this report. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. That ends the reports. We've dealt with item 25, so if we can move now to item 24, material change of use, 5 Mandalay Avenue. If I could ask staff to quickly give us a brief on this report.
Material change of use for a shop, which comprises of a commercial art gallery and a gift shop. The facility currently operates in that fashion, as well as I think 10 square metres of the dwelling is used for a real estate office. The reason for why we've received an MCU application is because it doesn't satisfy the definition of a home business, and so the applicant was required to lodge a planning application to justify the existing use on site. During the public notification process, there were 6 submissions that were received, 4 in support of the proposal, and 2 objections were received. The reasons for objections was based on need for an additional gallery, given that there was one across the road, and secondly, based on a precedent that had actually set in relation to a commercial activity in a low-density residential area. The council officers have assessed the application on its merits. They've taken into consideration the strategic framework of the planning scheme. They've taken into consideration the low-density residential zone objectives, and they, as part of their assessment, they're recommending council approve it. They based it on the fact in relation to the potential impact, or that there is if you actually look at what's been proposed, the scale of what's been proposed in terms of the shop, it's very similar in terms of scale of a home business. So in accordance with our planning scheme, home business can be satisfied to a scale of up to 60 square metres. The proposal that's in front of council for a shop, primarily for a commercial art gallery and a gift shop, is for 60 square metres. So it's very comparable. Does it set a precedent? From a planning scheme perspective, each application needs to be assessed on its merits. So council officers have assessed the application, given its location, given that the impacts are quite minimal, given that it's located across the road from an existing commercial area, and they're recommending supporting the application subject to the conditions outlined in the report.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any questions of councillors on this application? Yes, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and this would be directed to Ebba. Ebba, under this MCU, does anything change for the business?
Through the chair, the actual operations don't change at all. The square meterage of the use of the commercial aspect, being the art gallery and the gift shop, doesn't change at all. It's just getting an approval to satisfy a statutory obligation under the planning scheme.
Thank you. I have one other question. How long has this business been operating under their current operation on Magnetic Island?
Through the chair, my understanding it's been operating for a few years, at least 3 years from memory, but it has been operating as other commercial uses prior to then, to my understanding. So it's just to satisfy the planning scheme obligations in terms of the land use that it actually triggers.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Walker.
Madam Mayor, I just heard the director say it's been used in other commercial uses. I just want to question that in relation to, is it home-based enterprises or was it commercial?
Through the chair, home-based businesses, the definition within the planning scheme provides for a variety of uses, and they're stipulated in the planning scheme. I can bring it out. The main requirement really is around the operations of the business, the residents that are operating the business, the square meterage of the business, and the potential impacts it may have on the amenity and the neighbours. Through the officer's assessment of the application, it satisfies the low density residential zone requirements.
And Madam Mayor, can you just add, because in the committee meeting, this was a point that was clearly thrashed out, and that was the definition of a home-based business originally was the resident or the operator lived on site and it was a small operation. When the submitter came forward, they discussed that in the last couple of years it's been used as a home-based business, but there was no resident, the owner didn't live on site. They had an employee work on site. And that was a bone of contention in relation to what the history had been, a home-based business, to now we're going to do an MCU, or put to us, an MCU for commercial zoning. So I just want to get some clarity around that. Is that a fair assumption of what looks like?
Through the chair, there's a couple of items just to clarify. To satisfy the requirements of the home-based business, it has to be a resident. It doesn't have to be the owner of the land that needs to reside on the site. It's just a resident within a dwelling needs to be operating the business. In relation to the commercial trigger, once you actually start providing a commercial use, being a commercial art gallery and a gift shop, that actually allows you to sell other products that aren't necessarily provided on site, i.e. that it's not the artist that's actually painted the galleries, and that they're actually providing a shop use, it triggers another definition within the planning scheme, and that's the reason why they've been required to provide lodge a planning application.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, Councillor Molokini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just questions on relation to Condition 5, talking about car parking in the area. We talk about minimum 2 car parks provided. We've got, from what I can see, the proposing art gallery, there's existing art gallery and a gift shop, and then we've got a real estate as well. Is there parking provided for, I mean, if we have one person turn up to the real estate, we have one other person for the gift shop, where the overflow people go, I'm guessing. And there is no, from what I can see, there's no requirement for anyone to seal those parks in and out off the Richmond Road. And I am conscious of when you have excessive car movements in and out on the shoulder of the road, the condition, which will be left to us to fix later on. That's all.
Through the chair, I believe there's no requirement for them to seal, but up the side of the development, there's room for 4 cars. That's correct, Kim?
Yeah, okay.
It's on page 32, councillors, the car parking condition of your report.
Just 36. Yep. So, if I may, Madam Mayor, I look across the road at the other commercial properties. We've got I think it's a hardware store, we've got a takeaway shop, a few other things. I noticed they're sealed out to the bitumen with sealed car parks inside. Considering this is being proposed to become a commercial precinct, would it not be prudent to condition that? That's all I'm questioning.
Could I just comment through the chair, it's not changing its zoning whatsoever, it's retaining its low density red, so it's not becoming a commercial precinct. Nothing's changing in terms of the use.
For that block, sorry,
My apologies. I thought
Through the chair, just to clarify and to reiterate the acting director's comments, we're not changing the zoning. All it is facilitating an existing use. So all the recommendations proposing to do is to approve the 60 square metres of art gallery and gift shop within the dwelling itself. The residential zone remains.
Underlying, it's still retained
It's still the
its
zone.
residential zone.
Oh, so if I may just further to that then, my understanding through another issue I had that home-based businesses can't operate over 60 square metres.
I think that's correct, is it?
So what is the trigger for, if they're already existing in 60 square metres now, what's the trigger for this requirement? That's, I guess, is for me.
I believe this was discussed at committee.
Through the chair, it's the use, purely because of the sale of the art gallery products and the gift shop. It comes within the definition of a shop as opposed to a home-based business.
So if I can try and clarify this, if you're a hairdresser and your skill is obviously as a hairdresser beautician, you're selling your services as a home-based service. What we have here is an art gallery, and it's not selling their own pieces of art, they're selling other pieces of art and gifts and things like that. So technically speaking, while it might be only a very small business, it doesn't fit under the definition of a home-based business.
Sorry, through the chair.
Hang on, Ebbett, is that
Yes, correct. But just wanted to clarify on the 60 square metres, what the officer recommendations approving at this point in time is just 60 square metres of that dwelling. If they want to expand even further, they're required to lodge another application for that expansion. So it's just reflecting what the current use is on site. So just wanted to clarify that we're not actually rezoning the land and that they can actually provide as much commercial square meterage on site. The approval is to restrict it to that 60 square metres of land, which is comprised of 50 square metres of art gallery and 10 square metres of the office space.
Can I just get a point of clarification, please, from the staff, and it might help the councillors here. If the owner, or if it changes hands, another application would be required if a use other than an art gallery and real estate agency was going in there, correct? And if it's not a correct home-based business or fit into that category, they'd be required to come back with a new application for an MCU. Okay, so we are seeing nods from the staff. Does that clarify that for some of the councillors?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Walker?
Madam Mayor, I think where the confusion is, we keep saying home-based business, but on here it says MCU.
Yeah, that's
Then it
right.
said, so it's an MCU on 60 square metres, so it's a material change we use on a dual occupancy to a commercial MCU on 60 square metres. So it's not really a home base, it's now becoming commercial zoning on 60 square metres. That's what we see. Yeah, is that correct?
It's correct, but I'd refer the councillors to the officer's report.
Yes.
And it outlines its justification for how they've arrived at their recommendation. So it refers to the strategic intent of the planning scheme, but it also refers to the low density residential zone and the performance outcomes and acceptable solutions as a result of that, the low density residential zone. So the planning scheme doesn't necessarily, for lack of a better word, prohibit a commercial use within a residential area. It still needs to meet the relevant performance criteria, and that's been outlined in the council officer's report. If you refer to the table 4.3.1 Zone Code Part 6, it actually outlines all the relevant performance criteria, objectives for the low density residential zone to satisfy the council officer's assertion that it's not going to be a negative impact on the residential amenity of the area.
Thank you.
Councillors, if you start at page 40 and work through to page 42, you will see that under the low density residential code that the Director talks about, the PO 9, for example, which is possible outcome 9, for the development to minimise impacts on surrounding land and provide for an appropriate level of amenity within the site, having regard to noise, hours of operation, traffic, visual impact, odour and emissions, lighting, access to sunlight, privacy and outlook. It believes that this building and this operation can comply with that, and it lists there how the proposal will comply with the possible outcomes. All right, so, and that goes through for various things. For example, parking and servicing councillor, possible outcome 15. Parking facilities located to be concealed from public view to ensure an attractive streetscape. The proposal will not affect the site's existing on-site parking facilities, which have never been concealed from public view. It is therefore not reasonable to pursue significant changes to this situation. In any case, most of the driveway parking space does, however, remain behind the building setback. So, I understand. Ebba, would you like to comment further?
That's a really good point in relation to parking. The point below that in terms of PO 17 refers to non-residential uses and the criteria that needs to be met to satisfy that requirement. So it refers to the character, it refers to the scale of the development, it refers to potential impacts. That assessment has been undertaken by the officer, and the officers satisfied themselves that the proposal as presented to council will satisfy those criteria.
All right. So are there any further questions? Yes, Councillor Cook.
Yes, through the chair. So, in essence, what you're saying, if I look at page 36 here, we have those blocks that are already designated commercial, 104, 106, 108, and plus the ones across the road, they're 864. So what you're saying is the block 5 will stay as is, residential, but not be rezoned or redesignated, it will stay as is.
Correct.
And one more question, if I may. We're referring to refuse bins. I know you've mitigated that by page 41 under PO 16. The development's refuse storage and collection arrangements will remain as existing. So that prevents them from introducing any waste bins out the front, one of the big industrial bins, being wheeled out and be picked up. I know it's a small business, but it is selling artefacts and things like that. So that prevents any introduction of any large industrial bins being wheeled out once or twice a week. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I refer councillors to the advice on item 1, refuse storage. The applicants or developer must ensure that adequate and appropriate refuse storage and collection arrangements are in place to service the approved commercial uses.
All right.
Thank you.
Councillor Greenie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As councillor for Magnetic Island and visiting on Saturday to the island, it was interesting to note that people commented that the tourism season this year was a cracker. And I think businesses like this support the economic benefit of Magnetic Island and also support the local artists. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, I've just got a couple of questions now for the staff. I note that you talk about possible outcome 17 of non-residential uses are established only where obviously compatible, supporting local day-to-day community, not impacting on the role of functions of the city network. And you note there in the last para, given the extent of the development compliance within the zone, that's right, particularly for PO, there is no compelling reason why the development should be located in a more appropriate area. Why do you need a compelling reason not to locate them in an appropriate area? I find that an interesting comment.
Through the chair, I think that's referring to the centre's activation strategy in relation to the hierarchy that we had in terms of major shopping centres, neighbourhood shopping centres, etc. It doesn't necessarily refer to a small commercial enterprise within a residential area.
So when do we maintain the centres of hierarchy, particularly for shopping centres and commercial developments, and where do we draw the line?
Through the chair,
where the professional staff feel the line should be drawn.
Through the chair, there's a couple of significant applications that have been recently referred to council, and that they are along Ross River Road and those areas, and that's really is when you have a major shopping centre that's going to impact significantly on that hierarchy. And council has dealt with that application previously, and we have refused that application what's the name of the suburb? In the Rasmussen location.
All right. All right, councillors, we're being asked now whether or not to support this development application. So firstly, I need someone who wishes to move and accept and second this report. Move Councillor Greenie. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Okay, Councillor Coombe, thank you for that. I don't believe we need any further discussion. I think we've dealt with this report. Do I have anyone, though, who wishes to speak against this? I know, Councillor Greenie, you've spoken for this.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
All right. I could ask the seconder, do you wish to speak on this as well?
What I would like to say is I have concerns. I have been concerned in the reading of this that we effectively are reverse engineering outcomes here, and I do get concerned that people will start, in inverted commas, home-based businesses and push us into situations where we end up creating precincts that actually aren't in line with the strategic framework. Having said that, I have listened to everything the Director said today because I didn't actually attend this particular committee, and I'm happy to speak in favour of it. I think I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation. My concerns are allayed.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have anyone who wishes to speak against this? No. So I gather... All right, then we have a mover and seconder. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Very well done, because I know there were a lot of concerns on this, and you have allayed my concern in terms of having to come back to council if there is a significant change of use on the site. So that's fine. All right, councillors, that is the agenda proper. We do have one item to consider in confidential. Right, move Councillor Walker, seconded Councillor Molokina, that we move into confidential to determine the final item, which is part of the addendum, item 26. Yeah, so we have a mover and seconder. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Is there any general business, please? Councillor Cook.
Through the chair, last Tuesday evening, I, along with a few hundred other Townsville residents, had the pleasure of attending and watching the first ever wheelchair rugby league international game to be played here in Townsville. This took place at our very own Townsville Stadium. Is that, everyone hear me all right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, no problem.
Speak up, mate, can't hear.
As a prelude, I also had the privilege of playing in the curtain raiser to this international game, along with some other local Townsville identities. Now, I've played a lot of contact sports in my time, from rugby league, boxing and other football codes, and I came away from this friendly game of wheelchair rugby league with more bruises than I did from any contact sport I've played over the years. I'm sure that those who saw the highlights of the international game from that night will attest to this. It is not a game for the light-hearted, but extremely entertaining. It would also be remiss of me not to mention the outstanding sportsmanship displayed by not only both teams on the night, but also to all trainers, coaches and supporting staff. A truly wonderful evening. On the night, I was presented with a plaque by the management of the England team to pass on to the staff of the Townsville Stadium to show their appreciation. But to put some text around the significance of this gesture, I'll read the following letter I received from Darren McKenna, who is one of the coaches and trainers of the Australian Wheelchair NRL Rugby League team. And he has and still is working closely with the England team and was also instrumental in getting this game to Townsville. Dear Russ, I'm writing this email to applaud the efforts of the TCC staff at the Townsville Stadium. In the lead up to the Queensland Marlins wheelchair. The dramas on the day of the game, did any TCC staff member put their hands up in the air in frustration? Instead, solutions were found and issues were resolved. On the night, we had the pleasure of having a world-class referee, Mr. Tim Robinson, who was head referee for the 2017 World Cup in France, to oversee the proceedings, as well as having the state's affiliation manager, Martin Meredith of the NRL, as well as the management, as managers and staff of the English team at the game. And the comments I personally got from them was, now bearing in mind this is an email or a letter I received from Darren McKenna. These are the words from Tim Robinson, head referee, 2017 World Cup in France. This is one of the best facilities I have ever refereed in. From Martin Meredith, Queensland affiliation manager of the NRL. This is an awesome stadium. We should bring the state of origin here. From English management of the Touring England International Wheelchair Rugby League team. Now, bearing in mind, this team has toured the world and has been playing wheelchair rugby league for quite some time, and is made up of a lot of return vets that have been involved in the Invictus Games also. Their comment was, one of the best in the world, better than any facility we have at home. So, and this again is still Darren McKenna talking. So all I can say is thank you to Townsville City Council for hosting our game, and please pass on our congratulations to the team at the stadium who bent over backwards to help us make the night a success. So, in conclusion, Madam Mayor, on behalf of the England International Wheelchair Rugby League management and team, I present this plaque to Mayor Jenny Hill in recognition of the outstanding work that all the staff at Townsville Stadium did during the days leading up to, on game day, as well as after this great event. Their tireless effort have ensured that Townsville is well and truly on the radar for any future wheelchair sporting events at local, state, national and now international levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, I think this should sit at the Townsville Stadium in recognition of the work done by our staff in ensuring that this was a great event for all who participated. So CEO, if you could please, and thank the staff involved for their efforts in ensuring that this event went very well. I'd be very proud to see us host a State of Origin.
I think it's, without being too presumptuous, I think it may be on the cards. I think we can push for it, and all of us push for it. I think we may well get it.
It'll be the closest to the State of Origin I think we'll see for a while. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors, Councillor Cook in particular. The only reason I'd like to make a statement is this is something we're seeing repeated on a regular basis. I bring to everyone's attention the AFL Masters that were an incredibly successful event that was held here. And I was inundated with calls from friends who are much braver than I and are still playing at a Masters level, who were unbelievably complimentary not only of our venues but of our staff, and they're all looking forward to coming back here again. So I accept this latest compliment, but I think it's more important that we acknowledge that regularly our staff and our venues aren't recognised for the quality that they provide for this community on a regular basis. So thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, CEO. All right, thank you. Any comments from any of the other councillors on this?
Through the chair, Madam Mayor, it's a segue probably in relation to this conversation because we have the Sport and Rec team working to work inclusively with clubs workshop happening this week. So working with today's 22nd, yeah. I think we have a full house on that one, so that's an amazing outcome, and that's really helping clubs to be more inclusive in their practices and developing programs to support people of all abilities to participate in their chosen sports. And then on the 30th we have the third inclusion day, sports games, and the NRL's in there again, bit of netball and a lot of biff. brave people getting on that court, having experienced the wheelchair netball. It's no mean feat, but that's the third one, and that's actually being facilitated by Kuthering. The TCC is a major player in that, and as well as the Human Rights Commission. So well done for inclusion in the community.
Thank you, councillor. Right, any further business, general business? Yes, councillor Raybon.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I just would like to update council and the community on our successful week LGAQ conference last week. So along, of course, with yourself, Councillor Saws and the Deputy Mayor, we presented our 3 motions to the floor of that conference. Now, of course, that conference is a way to lobby state government and other bodies for needed changes to allow us to respond to our community's needs. And our motions were aimed at improving efficiencies, clarity on laws pertaining to disaster management, and support in the way of funding for abandoned vehicles. I'm very happy to report that those 3 motions were successful, with one being unanimous amongst the 70 delegates of over 70 councils. And we, of course, look forward to the implementation of the changes that those motions saw. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Yes, we had a successful LGAQ. Councillors, just to put it out there into public frame, into the public area, the motion that we put forward on on state emergency services has been enacted upon by the state government and are currently reviewing all state emergency services, which it's had a lot of support from local government. Sadly, our one on dilapidated buildings, we've now had to move our local or ourselves in terms of that. The abandoned vehicle.
Whatever way we get there, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes. There's many ways to skin a cat. The one around abandoned vehicles, because many of the vehicles we are seeing aren't abandoned because they're stolen. Government now, or police now, remove the plates on vehicles where persons are intoxicated, or there are other issues around them having a driver's licence if they're driving unlicensed, or something like that, and the vehicle is kept at the side of the road. So we have to be cautious of this pushing away of the state responsibility back to local government. So that's what the LGAQ and the conference allows us to do, to tackle some of those issues. All right, is there any other? Councillor Ryder or Councillor Sauce? Sorry, Councillor Sauce.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on the LGA conference and in reference to the visit by the Minister of Local Government, Sterling Hinchley, specifically around some updates around Belcara. He did advise at the meeting that some changes would be debated and that's subsequently been passed in State Parliament. These include optional preferential voting will remain for the 2020 local elections. Amendments have been sought from the Attorney General's office around conflict of interest to gain greater clarity and how conflicts are identified and dealt with. Another item was the Register of Interest, which is intended to align as much as practical with those of state members of Parliament. But I would encourage all with a keen interest in the Stage 2 reforms of Belcara to get on the state government's website. There's considerable amounts of information on purpose, direction and expectations. I believe it's important to acknowledge this council and all councils around Queensland that have lobbied the LGAQ to represent them to the state government for amendments such as those mentioned and others to gain balance for our communities moving into the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor, and very good point raised. All right, any other general business? Councillor Ryder.
Mine's just to probably thank the council for their support letting me go to the Volunteer State Conference in Brisbane, and we just got so many outcomes and learnings from that. The biggest one was probably the update on spontaneous volunteers and disasters, and that was quite a sad workshop, lots of tissues, because I didn't realise people are so enthusiastic and want to help, but unfortunately a lot of volunteers cleaned out cupboards and belongings that actually meant a lot and that could have been cleaned up. So about educating volunteers that go into disasters, I took a lot from that, and I've got about a 10-page to roll through with our VNQ. The relationship we rebuilt with Far North Queensland, that was, you would never get that from a piece of paper or an email. So I think we're actually going to work board to board with Cairns, and yes, we're going to work with Cairns, but I think we can both learn off each other, share our resources, so that was really good. The systems and technologies, it was just great to hear what other people are doing all over Queensland. The current trends and challenges, and I noticed when Councillor Coon talked about when asked about the grants, and they noted the decrease in volunteering as it is across the state. And it was a great conference for board members, local councillors and people high up in volunteer organisations. But again, that reaffirms what the importance is on our grassroots volunteer conference, which is being staged in Townsville in May or June next year. So I think there's a conference for everyone. This was certainly not for the grassroots, but we took a lot of learnings which I think we can roll out in Townsville. So thank you, councillors, for letting me attend that.
Well done, Councillor Ryder. Councillor Ryder, do you think eventually we'll get a framework that will ensure that during disasters we can manage volunteers in the most appropriate and best possible way?
I think we need to take some learnings from other towns and other disasters. I think we need to really just take on board what happened, learn from it and fix it before the next disaster. So I've actually requested a meeting with Wayne and VNQ and Volunteering Queensland because I think we need to be a bit more on the front foot.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
There's always learnings you can take away from these things. Thank you, Councillor Ryder. Any other general business? All right, I will close the meeting at 2:55 and thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you.